Hello, friends. It is your unreliable narrator, your digital high priestess, Gray. And today I'm coming at you in the aftermath of this Libra solar eclipse, where I am feeling pleasantly pensive. Actually, I wrote down the eclipse vibes in my little pocket notebook where I put shower thoughts and other little random snippets of my inner world. And I wrote the following as the post-eclipse vibes. Excoriated, sublime, suprasensory, delicately pensive, possessed with the perfection of the emptiness, portents of passionate endings and humble beginnings, wobbly legs of a newborn calf, stumbling towards sensation, feathered and fluttering, hollow humming, underneath and underground. And those are the vibes. I am just feeling so deliciously renewed in this space. And so, just like I've been saying over and over again lately, really enjoying being in my inner world. And just enjoying being in the vibes, being in all of the pre-verbal goo that is moving through me right now. And I talk about being in your inner world a lot, absorbing into your inner world specifically. That's the terminology I like, because the word absorbing here it's doing a lot of rhetorical heavy lifting for me, because I don't just want you to be in your inner world. I don't want you to be some completely detached observer of your inner world, because completely detached observers do not have a creative point of view from which to create things. I want you to be soaked in the primordial goo of your own consciousness. I want you to be fully saturated with it, fully saturated with your own vibes, because that is where you have to be to really enjoy it. Not thinking about making things, not thinking about doing something and producing something from what's happening. You have to be fully present in the now. You cannot be thinking about the future. You cannot be thinking about the past, necessarily. There's a little nuance there. You have to be completely surrendered to the present moment, not trying to make something happen, not trying to project expectations over it. You have to be fully allowing what is trying to take place through you. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately, the irony of the fact that in order to make great art, you have to stop trying to make great art. I know if you're listening to this right now, I know if you are a consumer of creativity content, that you probably spend a lot of time thinking about how you can make more art, how you can make better art that is more pleasing to your ego. Nothing wrong with that goal inherently. You're probably often worrying about trying to develop the courage to put your art out into the world, to share what you create with people and be proud of it. And all of these are secondary objectives. All of these often act as distractions from the real problem, which is that we don't know how to receive our lives as art. We don't know how to fully saturate ourselves with our inner world without feeling the pressure to externalize it and to do something with it and to create from it and to turn it into something productive. Because we spend a lot of time talking about how obsessed we are with productivity, but it's really easy to ignore how that shows up in your art practice, with thinking that your art practice is about making things, that those are a one-to-one, which is absolutely not the case. Your art practice is about experiencing yourself and connecting with yourself and connecting with the energies and ideas that would like to meet you, that you would like to explore, that you feel a curiosity to discover. Because really, if you are an artist, you are a philosopher. we think of philosophy as this very academic, very intellectual pursuit. But philosophy is actually just your point of view. It's your way of approaching life, your way of relating to the world. And I find that lens really helpful. I find it really helpful as a creative to think of myself as a philosopher, because this reminds me that my job is not necessarily to make things. My job is to utilize my reality filter and utilize my specific beliefs and point of view to shape my experience. And then from that place, I have the capability to then express that view so that other people can experience it, so that other people can share in that, and so that maybe, if it resonates with them, it can also shape their point of view. It gets folded into their creative philosophical process and their way of living life. And this sort of advice would have been absolutely repugnant to me years ago. But I have found this perspective on art and creativity slowly birthing itself, whether I like it or not. I found it coming into my sphere at a time when I was very much not receptive to it. And yet, this belief about how creativity and reality worked persisted. This belief that I have this assumption that I'm only happy and I'm only alive and I'm only fulfilled when I'm making art, when I'm making tangible things that I can put out into the world or just enjoy myself. I only feel connected to myself when I'm able to externalize it and see it from the outside. But that assumption is wrong. That orientation to the creative process is wrong. It is not working for me. It is not the whole truth. And yet, that was my experience. I was thinking earlier about how useful it has been as an emotional processing tool, as a nervous system regulation tool, as a creative development tool for me to talk out loud to myself. And I was thinking about how just a couple years ago, when I would try to do things like that, even whenever I would try to journal on paper, I would just instantly dissociate. I did not have the capacity to be present with and connected to myself. It did not feel comfortable for me. It was literally not accessible to me. It would immediately push me out of the range of my window of tolerance. And slowly, very slowly, it's about 6 years since I had this epiphany. So over about 6 years, I have built the capacity to be present with myself in that way. And now I very much enjoy that process. I very much enjoy the process of relating to myself as a creative act. And sometimes a little voice in my head says, this is cool and all, but when are we going to make art? Are we just wasting time here? This is time that could be spent making things. And that's what I really want. That's what really gives me that peak experience that I crave of seeing myself externalized and mirrored back to me in the clothing of my own mythology and my own symbolism. And I think this is why I've been so drawn to practices like hypersigil work, like working in my hypersigil journal, and all of these other creative modes that are not necessarily for anyone but me, that are for my eyes only. A lot of the things that I write in my hypersigil journal, like that little snippet that I read in my last podcast episode, they're very rough. They're not really good writing. There's plenty of good writing in there for sure. And a lot of it really pleases me to read back. And honestly, now I can honestly say that even the stuff that I think is bad is still pleasing to read back. But the point is that it's not polished work. It's my stream of consciousness. It is me experiencing myself. And doing this in the context of the hypersigil journal has been helpful for me because even though I'm not making art in the way my ego wants to make art, it still gives me the illusion that I am. It's not an illusion. You are making things, but it still allows me to feel engaged with my actual craft. And it helps me to cut the noise of that part of me that says I'm being unproductive and I'm wasting my time. And that work has allowed me to expand even deeper into my own perspective, to absorb even more deeply into my inner world, where I can really spend time just in my own consciousness, not writing, not externalizing anything, just experiencing myself directly. Or speaking out loud to myself, where it's going in the ether. It's not being recorded. I'm never going to see it again. This is all just for me to hear back, and for the spirit guides to hear around me, and for the nature spirits to hear. And that's it. And that's enough. I didn't have this intention when I started the podcast. I was very much still thinking about, how can I give people more ways to experience my work and to have contact with me and to connect with people. How can I practice saying my words out loud? Because that's something else that I've really wanted to practice. I'm a lot more comfortable writing my ideas than I am speaking them out loud. Because I worry, I perseverate a lot over saying things perfectly, and I like the precision that I have in writing, the precision I have with my words. But I have found that this practice already has become a really beautiful way of being in my own energy and just channeling. I've kind of lost contact with some of my channeling practices over the summer. I was going through a really difficult time in my personal life. I was withdrawing from weed. I've had an on and off relationship with weed for years. And I really decided once again that my body just doesn't really like this substance. I get some weird side effects from smoking weed, at least when I do it regularly, and it's hard for me to not do it regularly. I tend to lean on it a lot as an emotional coping tool, as a nervous system regulating tool. So I was withdrawing from weed, and I was having terrible insomnia, because I usually have about 6 weeks of terrible insomnia while I'm withdrawing from weed. So I just didn't have a whole lot of energy for channeling. And because of some difficult things that I went through back in June, I was also really struggling to be present with some of the emotions coming up. There were difficult things there for me to process that I was not ready to commit my full attention to. And around the time of the Pisces eclipse, it really hit me hard how much I was desperately craving being in the emptiness, absorbing into my inner world, and just channeling the nonsense and enjoying the process, and sometimes enjoying what comes out. And I was particularly noticing how scrolling on social media, mostly Threads, I have become very, very addicted to Threads, was keeping me from channeling. I was in that addictive loop with scrolling where I wasn't enjoying it, I wasn't feeling nourished by it, but I was unable to stop. I was addicted to that instant gratification and that attentional magnetism that social media creates. Whereas when you're channeling, when you're making art, you really do have to give yourself space to sink into it and to fully get in flow before you really get those rewards of feeling hyper-focused on what you're doing and fully absorbed in the process and really, like I said, in flow. But I was finding that I missed that flow because you don't get that sense of immersion from social media. It is not the same quality, and it is also not a nourishing sort of immersion. So I really was I am ready to give this up. I'm ready to stop doing this. I'm ready to really just enjoy my life again. I'm ready to enjoy the reality that I'm creating and the world that I live in. And a part of me was simultaneously very afraid of that. Very afraid that when I absorbed into my inner world, I would not enjoy what I found there. I was afraid of anxious thoughts arising, old worries, me projecting negative past experiences and bad times in my life forward and imagining all of the ways that terrible things could happen again. Because I was experiencing a lot of that when I was trapped in the endless scroll, when I was trapped in all of these sort of junk food media habits. But I really realized for the millionth time, I realized once again that all of those anxious thoughts and projecting past negative experiences forward into the future, that is what happens when we don't engage with our creative channel in a proactive, productive way. That is what happens whenever we don't consciously use our creativity. And the way I like to put this is our creative channel begins to cannibalize itself. We naturally are always creating our reality, creating stories. You cannot completely halt that process, and you wouldn't want to. Because that's how we process and understand the world. As much as we need to lean into embodiment and sensation and balance out that inner narrative, the narrative will always persist, and these two things have to work together. And so when you're not consciously and intentionally utilizing that creative power to create the reality you want to live in and focus on the sensations and experiences that you want more of, you will be automatically drawn into your most destructive patterns. You will be drawn into creating your own destruction. And part of this is our body trying to understand its own feelings of malnourishment. Your body is sitting there like, I feel bad from all of this scrolling I'm doing. That's like part of my brain that is firing all that dopamine is telling me that I love this and this feels great. But other parts of my body and other parts of myself are telling me that this feels awful and terrible. So something bad must be happening. I must be in some kind of danger, that I am trapped in this exhausting cycle. I must be avoiding something. So your brain starts to confabulate. It starts to create stories of what you must be avoiding or what bad things must happen if you leave that loop. So after the Pisces eclipse, I was resolved to lean into the discomfort. And for maybe about a week, I would wake up every morning feeling that dread and avoidance of the creative work and avoidance of anything nutritious and nourishing that I might do. And every morning, I would try to breadcrumb my way into doing something nourishing. And a lot of times, it was really just like administrative, mundane, menial tasks related to Over the Rainbow, related to my work projects. Like just little things like, can I make some graphics to promote this PDF I'm about to put out? Can I make a nicer page on my Substack to promote my coaching services? You know, just the most basic, most simple, but somewhat productive and fulfilling tasks that I could come up with. I know earlier I said productivity is not the goal, but you know, sometimes productivity can be nourishing when it's something that we actually care about, something that will have rewarding results. Those are the types of productive tasks that are very healthy and helpful. But anyway, I would find that sometimes even just contemplating whatever sort of menial task I had assigned myself would start to make me feel motivated again and actually excited about my creative projects and excited about doing the work. But easily within like 5 to 10 minutes of doing them, I started to feel that motivation again. And I think this works especially well for me as a generator type for the human design girlies, because you need to give your sacral something to respond to. I need to light myself up with excitement and eros every single day in order to get things done. I need to form some kind of creative response to my life and my world every single day in order to generate energy to do shit. So if you are a projector type or a reflector or even a manifester, you might not find that to be as important. But I find especially for the generator types out there, especially for folks with a defined sacral, you need to get moving. if you want to get things done, if you want to create things, you have to start moving in a direction. It doesn't even matter really what direction you move in. Because even if you're relatively new to listening to your body and what your body tells you it wants to get done, even if you just do something that doesn't light you up, just experimentally and see how it feels, you will notice fairly quickly whether it's draining you or giving you energy, and then you have an opportunity to correct course. And I also think, regardless of your human design type, it is to an extent important for all creatives to just get moving in this way, to just do something, pick something up. And that's part of the reason why I find the framework of hypersigilling and hypersigil journaling, which again, you can create hypersigils in any way. You can do like video recordings, audio recordings. You can just act it out. It can just be an embodiment practice for you. You don't even have to record anything anywhere, though that does increase the potency of your magic. But the reason that I find hypersigil work to be so helpful is because it can be that thing to just get you moving in a direction. If you're struggling to create things or you're overthinking what you want to create, that can just get you engaged with your creative channel in some capacity and connected to yourself, connected to your own creative resources, so that you can actually develop those other ideas and so that you can develop the energy to move towards them. And also, usually, once we just get moving, once we get out of our heads and into our bodies, whatever seemed very intimidating and difficult and impossible and too big, too many steps becomes drastically simplified. It becomes a matter of inertia. You have overcome inertia. You have started moving. An object in motion wants to stay in motion. You're going to keep making things. You're going to keep doing things. You're going to find yourself naturally rolling downhill towards that thing that you wanted to get done that seemed too big and scary. But circling back to the idea of being in the emptiness, of absorbing into your inner world, I really want to drive home here how much I did not previously like being in strange, nebulous, sensational pockets. I do not like things that I can't express in words. I'm a very wordy person. I have a Gemini moon, Mercury, and Venus. I have Mars in Virgo. I need to yap. I need to talk. And I need intellectual stimulation. That's really where I feel most comfortable. And now I feel like I finally get to really enjoy my grand trine in water. I really get to enjoy my Cancer, sun, and midheaven. And just being in the vibes, just like letting myself feel the feelings and not feeling like I need to intellectualize them or like I need to express them. I wouldn't say it's 100% easy for me and that I'm great at it all the time. Sometimes I find myself being in the vibes and I just want to like share about it. I want to yap about it so bad that I end up like going and bugging Cody about it and yapping at him. And then like pretty soon I'm like, I've been here a while yapping, and this is not what the thing is today. This is not what I'm supposed to be doing. But more and more, I am really getting comfortable just in that space of feeling the vibes and allowing myself to enjoy the emotions and energetic currents that are present for me at that moment, and allowing myself to not fully cognitively understand them. And there's this beautiful sexual tension in that space for me because I want to express them. I want to, even just for my own edification and my hypersigil journal, I want to express them. And that's usually where I lean into stream of consciousness or drawing or other little like word games and whatnot, like my little like solar eclipse vibes dump in my pocket notebook. That's where I tend to lean into those practices and kind of like meet myself halfway, where I'm like, okay, we can be in the vibes and kind of express this sort of non-linear jumble of what's coming through and how our mind is trying to get its arms around it. And it just feels so delightful. It feels so good. And being able to like go back through my journals, because let me tell you, as wordy as I am, because I was not connected to myself for years, because I was chronically dissociated. I have not been a journaler until I started in 2020 doing daily journaling. But I would keep it like very short, very, very sparing. Sometimes I would only be writing like a sentence a day. But that's where you gotta start. You gotta start somewhere. And like now, I really love regular journaling as often as I can. Like lately, I've been making so many things, I have not had a lot of time for it. And so like last night, I was trying to catch up a little bit on my journaling the last couple nights. And I love being able to go back through my journals even when I don't remember exactly what I was talking about or it doesn't completely make sense to me. Honestly, sometimes that's my favorite. And also, one thing that I really enjoy is doing bibliomancy from my own journals, doing divination with my own journals. That is so much fun and always mind-blowing. And that has really been one thing that has helped me to find value in and prioritize absorbing into my inner world, is allowing myself to produce all of this illogical, non-linear ephemera of my inner world. Just like little bits and pieces that I can look back on decades from now and be like, what the hell was I talking about? What the hell was I tripping on? Because that is so fun. It's so fun just to return to those moments and just feel the feelings and get to sample that energy again. I feel like a lot of the creativity advice that I give is somewhat unconventional in that I have been consuming a lot of creativity content for years and years. I know the basic themes, I know the most common rhetoric that you see in the space, and I find myself often wondering, will anyone find this advice useful? Like, are creatives actually struggling with this, or is this just me? But more and more lately, I've started to feel confident that, no, there is a little pod of people just like me out there who really need to hear this. But most importantly, I have to say this for the me of 9 months ago, for the me of 7, 10, 20 years ago. I need to say this for all of the past me's who really needed to hear it, who knew deep in their bones that this was the secret to unlocking their creativity, but just were not surrounded by the right sort of encouragement to pursue those things. So I find that I seem to be repeating myself ad nauseum lately about absorbing into your inner world, about embodying your God self, about being in the emptiness, being in the void, about leaning into the magic of your life. But that is because that is what I needed and continue to need to hear. That is what is still alive for me in my own creative practice and what produces results for me time and time again. When I stop thinking so much about making art directly, when I stop narrowing my focus and exerting so much pressure on this thing that doesn't want to move, and just back up a little bit, widen my frame, widen my view, and focus on living and being, that is when suddenly I start to create my best work, and when I really just can't stop creating. I can't stop making things. Like, I have been on fire lately with shit that I want to create. I have so many things planned that I haven't even been able to start yet because I've been so busy with the past plans that I made and actualizing those and keeping the content machine going, because I have so many things that I want to tell you guys and so many things that I want to share. And it is all because I stopped trying to make a content and I stopped trying to think about what I think, like what creatives are expecting to hear from me, what they need to hear from me from some external perspective, and started thinking about what other creatives like me need to hear, what I need to hear. What I really dream of is radicalizing my own little group of creatives who want to live this magical, mythical life with me, who want to create for themselves, so that then the things they make for themselves and the things that they're enjoying coming out of their own creative channel then feed and fertilize the things that they want to make for other people, the things that they want to put out into the world. Another thing that has been a big motivation for me in this project is that I have spent many years on healing work. I have quite severe PTSD, CPTSD. Not anymore, I would say. I don't think that the last time my trauma therapist, which I do not see anymore, had tested me, I don't think I even technically qualify for a diagnosis anymore, even though I had very severe presentation when I first started therapy. But I have CPTSD, and I have spent years trying to undo the damage of my first 22 years on this earth. Honestly, the first 26 years on this earth. And I became so mired in that process and so obsessively, narrowly focused on it that my creative expression did not completely die. As I had said in my first podcast, I've never completely been able to give it up. And most acts of living are inherently creative. I like to use the example if you're making a nice dinner for your friends or planning a nice night out with your friends, that's creative. These things that we take for granted are often an act of creative expression. So you're never completely not expressing yourself. But I did mostly let my creative expression fall to the wayside. I started to neglect it. And I really started to feel like I would not be able to be creative until I reached this illusory state of healing. Even though intellectually I knew that healing is not a destination, that you will never be quote unquote healed in some static sense, I still was holding on to the belief that the state I was in right then was not good enough to create from, was not regulated enough to create from, was not healed enough to create from. And it's really when I pulled myself out of that and started resuming my devotion to my creativity that I experienced the most healing. It's whenever I pulled out of the healing journey and pulled into the living journey and just being where I was at and appreciating that and not trying so hard to get away from it, to get away from this unhealed version of me. That is really when I began to perceive myself as having been healed. And that's when I started experiencing so many breakthroughs, especially in my ability to express my authentic personality online and make new friends, socialize with the humans. These are things that have been very, very difficult for me for many years. And suddenly, really, I would say that I have been making big improvements in this area over the course of about 2 years. I started trying to do a visibility video practice on Instagram because I really struggled with being on video, with seeing myself talk and hearing myself talk and allowing other people to perceive me that way. So I started doing that, and that really helped. And then getting on Threads and letting that just be my little social media live journal dumpster where I dump all of my goofy thoughts, that really lit the fuse on all of this healing in terms of my ability to relate to people and be open to relating to people and to connecting with people. I really started liking myself, genuinely liking who I am, probably for the first time in my life. I had so hard-coded in my head that I am a person that people just kind of tolerate, like an annoying presence, that I was even finding it showing up in my closest friendships at the time. I was finding that I was attracting people who just kind of tolerated me because I just kind of tolerated myself. I was seeing myself through the perspective of past people in my life who thought me annoying and somewhat unlikable, who just tolerated me at best. And when I really started allowing myself to just express on Threads and indulge in a different sort of creative expression, posting is creative expression too. posting your shower thoughts is creative expression too. I just found it to be so healing and started to realize like, oh, I should aspire to more fulfilling, more mutually loving, mutually respectful connections. And I really am at a place in my life where I feel like I have been healed by my creativity. I still get triggers. I still definitely, very obviously, am a wounded person. But I don't identify with being a wounded person. I don't identify with being traumatized anymore, quite honestly. And that doesn't mean I deny that reality. That doesn't mean I deny that aspect of who I am. It just means that's not the primary lens through which I see myself. And that's not the primary lens through which I relate to the world. I am no longer on a path of healing. Because I realize that if I just focus on living my life now and being fully present for it and fully accepting of how my life is now, the healing will take place. I will continue to allow those long buried emotions to float up where I can move them out of my body. And that is the power of creativity. You know, that's the power of doing all of this creative self-relation work and this reality creation and self-creation work, is that you have the ability to increase your tolerance for emotions that you have previously had very little tolerance for, and to actually productively process and release them and let that go. But crucially, in order for that to happen, you cannot have an attachment to getting rid of them. You have to realize that you're going to live with these emotions for as long as you need to before they are ready to be let go. And I always like to compare it to, like, you know, sipping on a giant gallon of trapped emotions, that you sip on little bits at a time until it's gone. And you can't just expect to chug that entire gallon and get rid of it. And maybe you won't drink the entire gallon in your lifetime. Maybe you will always live with some degree of remnants of the things that have happened to you. But that doesn't have to be a burden. That can be the contents of creation. That can be your creative resources from which you make beautiful things in the world and express yourself and enjoy the story that you've lived. And that may sound very strange to some people, that you can enjoy a traumatic story of your life. But whenever you begin to tell a more expansive, more sprawling story with more variety, it no longer just becomes a traumatic story of your life. It becomes a story that includes trauma, but it includes a lot of other things too. And it's all a matter of choosing what you want to experience, choosing what you want to focus on, choosing what you want to consider the major plot points of your story, and focusing on those. Thank you so much for being here with me, friends, for listening to me yap. I love getting to connect with y'all over these ideas, so please leave me comments, let's chat about it, join the conversation. And just a friendly little reminder that if you have enjoyed this podcast, you can get access to it 2 weeks early by becoming a paid subscriber over on Substack, which is overthegrainbow.substack.com, Grainbow being my name, and inbow. And you can also get my new book, Birthing the God Self, on my Substack as well, in a beautiful PDF form with lots of pictures from my hypersigil journal and original artwork. So that's my spiel, and I hope to see you next week. Oh, bye-bye. I don't know why I am this way.